Okay. You can see over here when I test it that it is pumping. Work on getting the thermostat back in. Good morning. It's been a couple of days since I've worked on the forklift with work and everything else going on. Also, I broke the thermostat housing, so that's got to go back in today, and then I'm going to try to finish up the wiring. And as I've said a bunch of times now, I'm going to try to finish this up today and get it running. One of the things that I did do in the past few days is I've talked to a couple of folks that work on forklifts and got some advice on some ways to try to clean up the transmission a little bit and see if it runs. But it doesn't look good that I'm going to find somebody willing to rebuild this for me, the transmission, if it is bad, which means I'm probably going to have to do it myself. So first thing I'm going to do today is I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to work on getting the thermostat back in and thermostat housing, get all the hosing down there, which will be fairly simple once I get the housing on. But the problem I have is the housing, or the thermostat's got to sit in here like this. And that was my downfall last time, because the thermostat dropped down in the housing, and then when I tightened it up, it snapped it. So what I'm going to do today is I'm actually going to put some gasket seal on the thermostat and the housing to try to get it to hold itself in place. And then if I can get it to hold itself in place, which I know I will be able to, then when I put the thermostat and the housing and the gasket on, it should go in there really quickly and easily. So with that said, let's go ahead, let's jump into this, get this project started, button this up. Once that's buttoned up, I still had the fan to do, but I can just manually run the fan for right now until I get everything else checked out, so I can just have a switch on it and just run it. And then I can get a final run on the final electrical wiring on the switch once all that's done. But for now, housing, then I'm going to make sure that this guy works right here. That is a pressure sensor switch, and I think that might be bad. If it is bad, I'm going to go grab another one of those, because that will run the fuel pump. This is the old fuel pump that I have here. I've got a new one, goes right there. Gonna run it down to the fuel tank there and get that all ready to go. So let's dive in and get started. Okay, this is what I was looking for. This is a high tack. Let's see, it's Permatex high tack, and I want that because I want this thermostat to get down on there and just tack up super nice. Right there, that's what I'm looking for. That tacks on beautifully. Time to go on. Trying to hold it in place so that thermostat doesn't pop out again. Okay. Well, I was being a little extra cautious here, but I didn't want to have it pop and break again. Okay, That's in there. I'm going to call that a win. So let's get the rest of this hooked back up. Okay. Everything is clamped back down. Everything should be tight. Should be, keywords. So the cooling system is tightened up. Now I'm going to go grab the antifreeze, throw it in here, make sure that works. From there, we'll go to the fuel pump, and then from the fuel pump, we should be able to try to start it because I'll just hot wire the fan across. So I'm going to go grab that stuff. I'll be back in a few minutes. Let's throw some antifreeze in. Well, that looks like it filled it up. So we'll go ahead and put some fuel to it and turn it over. And I'm going to make the switch over now to the new fuel pump. The old one wasn't working. So I'm going to pull this 90-degree off and get it set onto this new one, onto the new one. So get a grip on it and get it off. Okay. All right, we're ready to go back outside and get this hooked up. This will be the bottom, the top going up over the engine to the carburetor. This goes to fuel tank, and I've got a couple of band clamps for it, so we are set. It's really sunny out, so I'm not sure how much of this you're going to see, but this fuel pump's going to sit in here, and then we're going to plumb from the fuel tank to the bottom of the fuel pump and then over to the top. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these wires so that I can take them on and off. Before they were just on there permanently and I couldn't get them off. And my preference is to have some flexibility with it. So I'm just going to do these spade bits here. Get those on. Get those wires there. May need a bigger terminal for this. No, that one perfectly. Down there. That's fine. Maybe this door hooked on. I'm throwing heat on the other part. I don't want it to close up. From here on out, this is just a pretty simple bolt-on operation to get the fuel pump on. So this line here runs over to this solenoid, and when there is power to the engine, it will turn on. Well, there's power coming. Let me rephrase this. There's power coming from the engine or from the battery full time to this solenoid. This red wire here, when the engine starts and it creates oil pressure, completes the circuit, comes up here, closes, sends power down to the fuel pump, and the fuel pump runs. So when you turn the engine off and there's no fuel pressure, it doesn't continue to pump fuel into the engine or into the carburetor and flood the engine. So it's kind of a fail-safe for it. And that is really dirty, so I'm going to go clean that. The reason I said I wanted to clean this is the ground. So the unit grounds this, grounds to this, and into the block. Not real sure why we're running a double ground on it, but we are. If anybody knows why, put that in the comments. Actually, it looks like this. This wire comes back over to here. I guess that's grounding off the circuit. I don't know. But I will be curious if somebody does know why that's the case. Okay. That is hooked up. That, now I just need to wire up the, or finish up the hoses. Okay, I pulled the the gray hose off of this, and now I'm just going to cut this down to where it needs to be approximately. There's no inline fuel filter here. There will be, but for right now I'm just trying to get this so that I have something to test with. Long term, I will put an inline fuel filter right in here, but for now this will have to do. Down here. That's on. Well, that's pressurized. I'll let some of the pressure out of this. So what I'm going to go do is get the circuit tester, hook it up to the power, and make sure that the pump is working the way I want it to. So I'll be back in a minute. I don't know if you can see this very well, but this is a relay circuit tester. And what I'm going to do is plug in an adapter into the end of that matches this relay. So it'll match this 5-prong relay here, and which is this one right here. I've hooked it over to the battery, and when I test the buttons here, or when I push the buttons, it will actually trigger the circuit. So we should have fuel coming out of this, or we should hear fuel pumping. So let's go ahead and okay. You can see over here when I test it that it is pumping. So the fuel pump works exactly as it's supposed to. That's a good thing. And then since it is hooked up, since this relay is hooked up to the oil pressure switch, as soon as the engine shuts off, then it will shut off the fuel pump like I just did here. So I'm going to go over here, get this back in. It's a little longer than it needs to be, but that's okay, it works. This should allow us to start up the engine. We'll give that a try. Now I don't know if this relay is working or not with this, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn on the fuel pump manually with this switch here. So right there, so it's on. So I'm going to turn that on, and then I'm going to try to start the forklift. First thing I'm going to do is make sure everything's in neutral, and I'm not going to run like that, that's for sure. So let's kick on the pump. Pump's on. Alright, I'm going to go get some starter fluid. It probably needs just a little help. Shouldn't need much. We'll just give her a quick little spray. Turn the pump back on. I'm not sure if you can hear any of that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug the relay. So the relay's out. Well, the relay tester is out. I'm going to put the relay back in, and if this gauge works, then the fuel pump will come on and it will run. And if it does, that's a huge win for me. An absolutely huge win to not have to mess with this just because I'm being lazy. Well, let's see what it does. Now, the pump isn't working. It'll die in a minute. And it's dying. So we know right there that that pump is not working. I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm going to re-hook up the tester, and you'll see it works, which means that got to fix that, and that will be a trip to town. Now we'll plug this back in. Pump's on. We'll let the pump run for just a minute. We'll get fuel back up in the system. And one of the things I'm curious about is, will that fuel pump just continue to pump fuel in the engine? It doesn't look like it is. Looks like it'll shut itself down. Let's give her a little ether. Seems to like that. Okay, that knocking noise was actually the hydraulic pump. I hadn't tightened that down, so I'm going to get that tightened down before we do anything else. Now, with a little bit of luck, that shaft is on and it's doing what it's supposed to. The easiest way to figure that out is to start it up. Start it up and see if the hydraulics work on it. A little more antifreeze in there. I'm going to leave the fan off because I want the engine to heat up, open up the thermostat, flow through, check that. So I'm going to let that run a little warm. We're going to go ahead and get it started. So fuel pump is on. You can see this bouncing. Everything's spinning just like it's supposed to. So now, let's see. Bring it up here. I'm not going to try to drive it, but I want to see if the forks will move. Alright, I'm going to let that fan run for a while and cool everything off. Good afternoon again. It's been a day and a half, and I got the pump wired up. You've seen all that already. But earlier, I didn't have the book for the transmission. T22 transmission. I have the book for it, so there's a fill stick in the transmission, and I filled it up to full, and it wouldn't run. Well, it would barely run. You have to be almost full throttle to make it run. So when I got the manual, it said it takes 11 quarts. When I emptied it just now and I changed all the fluid, the transmission fluid, and put some transmission conditioner in it, it had maybe 3 or 4 quarts in it. So I don't know where that dipstick came from, but it's wrong. And so now I'm going to start up the forklift and see if it runs. It may take a while for the transmission fluid to work through it and the conditioner. So it may not run immediately. It may not move. But hopefully we made progress and it will move now. So let's give it a try. I had to make a little runway area for it in case it does move. My brakes are not very good, and so they only kind of sort of work. That's the next project once I get this thing running and moving. Let's get the fan on, give it a try.
That is a huge win. I was so concerned I was going to have to pull the transmission out and fix that. But it had 4 quarts in it instead of 11, and now it runs perfectly. So this thing runs. I'm going to have to work on the brakes, do some wiring on the fan, the pump. I'm going to put a fuse box in it so it runs better. But bottom line is, I have a running, functioning forklift that I can now get on to my other projects. I'll show you some updates on the final things we do, but I'm going to call it good for right now. This is a win. Have a great day.